Barnier and David Davis in the last hour. Joining me is a Conservative MP, John Penrose. Many thanks indeed for joining us this afternoon, Mr Penrose. So does a 2-week deadline fill you with confidence?
Well, it depends on what he's actually looking for and whether or not he's expecting us to pay lots and lots of money for nothing very much in return. I mean, what we need is a good, solid trade deal and to get the discussions towards that underway. And I think the longer they try and play things slowly in an attempt to ratchet up pressure, then I think the more people will back David Davis to be tough and determined on behalf of Britain.
Yeah, Michel Barnier did say this isn't about making concessions on the part of the Europeans or the part of the United Kingdom. But if the Prime Minister was forced to make concessions, say, for example, pay the Brexit bill that the Europeans are expecting, will that strengthen or weaken her position?
Well, I think an awful lot of it depends on whether or not we're getting the kind of trade deal which actually would be good for both the EU 27 and for Britain. Now, if we are getting that kind of deal, and it's far too early to say at this point because they haven't even really started those conversations, then I think we can start to talk about all sorts of other things as well. And there's a huge upside for both parties at the negotiating table. If, on the other hand, everyone's trying to play a game of beggar my neighbour, then I think people will be a lot less constructive and a lot more mean-spirited on both sides. And I don't think anybody sensible really wants us to get into that kind of a world.
Yeah, I mean, do you think both sides are prepared to play games such as that, given that the stakes are so high?
Well, I devoutly hope, and if everybody stays rational and sensible, then there is absolutely no reason why we shouldn't have a deal that's good for both sides. There's all sorts of opportunities which could be grasped and could be brought home, providing everyone stays rational and sensible. But it's difficult, and I appreciate it's not easy for either side to do that, given the high-profile pressures that happen every time they meet. And you guys and everybody else, quite rightly, are asking them all sorts of questions. So, calm heads are needed on both sides, I think.
Indeed, you've co-written a couple of amendments on the withdrawal bill. No concessions have been made. The concessions have been made by the Prime Minister. Are you prepared to rebel against the Prime Minister?
Well, I devoutly hope that we won't get anywhere near that stage, and the reason why is because I've only done a couple of very small changes, but important ones, I think, to do with the scope of the powers that the withdrawal bill gives to ministers when we need to modify British laws, when the European laws all become British ones on the day after we leave the EU. Actually, that's a technical thing. It just needs to happen straightforwardly, and it needs to happen quickly so that British laws work on the day after we leave, the same as they did the day before we left. And I think probably there's a technocratic answer there. If I was the minister in charge of the bill, or indeed if I was the Prime Minister, I wouldn't be revealing quite what I'm prepared to offer at this stage either. I think that would be, it makes an awful lot of sense from their point of view to wait until Parliament actually gets to debate this stuff. And yes, this seems to be one of those rare occasions when what gets said and debated in Parliament might actually matter on the day. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing what the Minister has to say. And with any luck, I'm sure reasonable people can reach a reasonable compromise and a reasonable deal on this and make sure that Brexit is still delivered on time and in the right way. And that's the crucial thing. That's the thing which nobody should be trying to lose sight of. Everybody should be wanting that to happen.
Will you be voting in favour of enshrining the day that we leave the European Union into law?
Yes, I mean, I think that's the thing which the Prime Minister said she wanted to do this morning. Strikes me as an excellent idea. If she thinks it's important, then that's good enough for me. I will certainly be voting in favour of that.
You were a Remainer in the run-up to the referendum. Your response, your thoughts on Lord Kerr's comments earlier on today, saying that he believes the Brexit process can be reversed? Well, I listened to his interview this morning, and he was saying that he thought, in theory, it could be if necessary. What, of course, he wasn't saying was whether or not the politics of the referendum decision, the democratic decision which this country just took, would make that the right thing to do. He was saying that legally he thought it could be done, perhaps. There may be other lawyers who might disagree with that. But I think democratically, now we've had a vote on it, it would be like having a general election and then deciding we were going to ignore the result of the general election. I don't think that would be acceptable to anybody in Britain, and I think we need to be really, really clear about the democratic mandate here, quite apart from the sort of legal theory and technicalities about what could happen if. So rather a legal technicality more than anything else for you? Hello, I'm sorry, I've lost sound there. A rather a what?
A legal technicality as opposed to anything else for you?
No, I'm sorry. I keep on losing sound there. And then I lost the rest of the day.
A legal technicality as opposed to anything else, Mr. Penrose?
I'm sorry, I can't hear anything.
Okay, Shane, though, we just lost Mr. Penrose there. A bit of a shame, but we definitely got the gist of what he was saying to us. John Penrose, thank you.